Hello, welcome to this lesson on the loanable funds market. Loanable funds market, we have the demand for loans right here and the supply of loans, which slopes upwards. Supply of loans is basically determined by savers and lenders. And these are the people who save and lend money in our economy. We have you and me people, we have businesses, firms, the government, and foreigners can save and lend money to our economy. And the demand curve slopes downward. So the demand for loans is influenced by people borrowing money, but also firms borrowing money and also the government borrowing money. Now, the equilibrium here is going to tell us the quantity of loans in the economy as well as the real interest rate. There's four possible scenarios that could happen. The first thing that could happen is there's more borrowing. So this is going to increase the demand for loanable funds. That's going to cause the demand for loanable funds to shift to the right, which makes the real interest rate increase and the quantity of loanable funds also increase. The next thing is that there could be less borrowing. That means that there's a decrease in the demand for loanable funds, which is going to cause the demand for loanable funds to shift to the left, which causes the real interest rate to decrease and the quantity of loanable funds to decrease. The next thing that could happen is that there's more saving and lending in the economy. This increases the supply of loanable funds, which causes the supply of loanable funds to shift to the right, which causes the real interest rate to decrease and the quantity of loanable funds to increase. The next scenario is that there's less saving and lending in our economy. That's going to decrease the supply of loanable funds. And the supply of loanable funds is going to shift to the left right here, causing a higher real interest rate and a lower quantity of loanable funds. Now, what if the government runs a budget deficit? Well, a budget deficit means the government needs to borrow money to cover their increase in spending or their decrease in taxes. Since they're borrowing money, they're going to demand more loanable funds, and borrowing is demand. So when they're demanding more loanable funds, the real interest rate is going to increase. And since interest rates are higher, then businesses are going to borrow less money for capital investment spending. And you remember, less capital investment spending leads to less capital goods produced in the future, which means we have less future resources, which means since we have less resources, we're going to end up with less production, which lowers our economic growth possibilities in the future. So, this impact of the government borrowing money is called crowding out because it's crowding out private sector investment. Since the government borrowing all this money increases the real interest rate, private sector does not do as much capital investment spending. And this could slow down economic growth unless the government is borrowing the money to produce more capital goods themselves, like roads, schools, more ports, more railways, other capital goods like that. But if they're just borrowing money to spend on things that are not capital goods, not future resources, then that's going to lead to crowding out of the private sector on these capital spending, capital investment spending, and could lead to lower economic growth possibilities in the future. That's all for this lesson. See you next time.